My name is Angela Williams, and I have lived 50 years on this earth, long enough to know that grief has a way of reshaping the furniture of your home. Not by moving it, but by freezing it. There's a chair at the end of my dining table that hasn't been touched in 5 years. It still holds the faint memory of aftershave and the creak of weight from a man who will never sit there again. That man was my husband, David Williams, a high school history teacher who used to say that every family meal was a lesson in itself: patience, listening, gratitude. When he died, suddenly, too soon, that chair became more than wood and fabric. It became a monument. Every evening when I set the table in our little house on the east side of Atlanta, I lay out 3 plates instead of 4. One for my son, Marcus, one for my daughter, Jasmine, and one for me. The 4th spot, where David's laughter used to echo, remains empty. I don't move it. I don't cover it. I don't let anyone else sit there. It's my way of keeping him with us, though sometimes it feels like a cruel reminder. I've told myself 1,000 times that life must go on, that a widow cannot live inside the echo of a single chair. But life has a way of testing resolve. That evening, the scent of baked chicken and rosemary filled my kitchen, covering the quiet that had settled after a long day. My feet ached. 2 jobs will do that to you. By day, I run payroll at a local clinic. By night, I ring up groceries at the Kroger down the road. People ask me how I manage. I tell them the truth: I don't have a choice. College tuition doesn't care that you're tired. Light bills don't pause for grief. I was ladling mashed potatoes onto Marcus's plate when he walked in, tie loosened, eyes still burning from the screen of some corporate spreadsheet. At 25, he carried his father's jawline but my restless energy. He had always been the boy who colored inside the lines, who stayed up late memorizing science terms while his friends were out. David used to beam when Marcus brought home another A. "That boy's going to change the world," he would say. And Marcus believed him. Now, Marcus is a man chasing the promise of success in a city that eats ambition for breakfast. He works at a real estate firm downtown, pulling hours that would bend most men in half. And still, when he walked into our kitchen, he was my boy, slumping into his chair like the weight of the world had just been tossed on his shoulders. "Long day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He nodded, loosening his tie further. "Just numbers, Mom, always numbers." I wanted to press him, to ask if he was sleeping enough, if he was remembering to take breaks. But I learned long ago that my children will only share when they are ready. Sometimes love is waiting in silence. Not 2 minutes later, the door burst open with a gust of October air, and in came Jasmine. My daughter doesn't walk into a room. She storms it like a melody that insists on being heard. At 21, she is all curls and fire, carrying a notebook full of lyrics and a voice that can rattle the walls when she lets it loose. Tonight, she wore ripped jeans and an oversized jacket, her headphones still hanging around her neck. "Sorry, Mama," she said, kissing my cheek before flopping down at the table. Traffic was crazy, and I had to stop by rehearsal. Rehearsal, that's her word for the dream she's been chasing since she was 13, singing into a hairbrush in front of the bathroom mirror. She wants to be a singer. A star. The kind of voice people stop to listen to on the subway. I want that for her too, but I've seen enough lives bend and break under the weight of a dream deferred, or worse, a dream denied. And when I see the sparkle in her eyes, I worry about the day the world might not clap loud enough. Dinner with Marcus and Jasmine is a study in contrasts. He sits straight, chewing slowly, his mind already calculating tomorrow's deadlines. She taps her fork against her plate in rhythm, humming under her breath, her mind already on the next verse. And I sit between them, the peacemaker, the bridge. They argue often. About responsibility, about music, about who's carrying more of the family's burdens. Marcus says Jasmine doesn't understand the pressure he feels to provide. Jasmine says Marcus doesn't understand the courage it takes to put your soul into a song no one might ever hear. Both of them are right, and both of them are wrong. I learned long ago that motherhood is not about winning arguments. It's about holding the tension of love in both hands and praying it doesn't slip through your fingers. As we ate, my eyes drifted, as they always do, to the empty chair. I tried not to linger there, but grief is stubborn. It arrives uninvited, like a guest who refuses to leave. And that night, I felt it stronger than usual. Maybe it was the way Marcus's shoulders sagged. Maybe it was the light in Jasmine's eyes. But I felt David's absence like a shadow in the room. I remember the night he died, the call, the hospital, the way Marcus tried to be strong at 20, his hand gripping mine while tears slipped down anyway. The way Jasmine screamed into her pillow as if the sound could reverse the universe. I remember standing at his funeral, feeling the ground tilt beneath me, wondering how I was supposed to raise 2 children when I barely knew how to stand. Somehow, I did, not perfectly, not without mistakes, but with the kind of stubborn faith only a mother can carry. "Mom," Marcus's voice pulled me back. "You should sit, you've been on your feet all day." I smiled, sitting down across from him. "I'll rest when you two stop needing me." Jasmine rolled her eyes, but there was a softness there. "We'll always need you, Mama. Don't pretend otherwise." We finished dinner in a mix of quiet and laughter, a fragile peace that has become our rhythm. Afterward, Marcus washed the dishes, Jasmine strummed her guitar in the living room, and I found myself alone again in the kitchen, staring at the chair. Sometimes I talk to it, not out loud, not with words exactly, but with the kind of whispered prayers that only the heart understands. I tell David about Marcus's new promotion, about Jasmine's latest song, about the bills I managed to pay. I tell him about the ache in my back, the fear in my chest, the hope I still carry. And though he never answers, though the chair remains silent, I keep talking. Because silence, I've learned, is not the absence of love. It's the space where love lingers, waiting to be remembered. That night, I turned off the kitchen light, kissed my children good night, and went to bed with the same prayer I have whispered every evening since he left this earth. "Lord, give me enough strength for tomorrow, because tomorrow always comes, and sometimes that's enough." The first time I saw Richard Carter, I was still wearing my grocery store uniform. It was a Tuesday night, the kind where the air in Atlanta hangs heavy with rain that never quite falls. I had just finished my shift, my hands still smelling faintly of lemons and plastic bags. Marcus was waiting for me in the kitchen when I got home, tie loosened, a glimmer in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. "Mom," he said, before I could even put down my purse, "my boss wants to meet you." I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Marcus, I'm nobody. What does your boss want with me?" But his expression didn't change. "It's not like that, Mr. Carter is different. He's been asking about you ever since I mentioned you helped me through grad school. He says he wants to meet the woman behind the man." I brushed him off, said I was too tired. That big city executives didn't really want to meet widows from small houses with squeaky floors. But Marcus wouldn't let it go. He told me there was a dinner party on Saturday at Richard's estate and that he wanted his family there. "Family, Marcus?" I asked. "Your sister won't last 5 minutes in a room full of suits." He smirked. "Maybe not, but Mr. Carter asked specifically for you." That was the beginning. By Saturday, Jasmine was pouting in the back seat, strumming her guitar with her nails as if to protest every mile we drove toward Buckhead. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "Rich people don't care about us, Marcus. They want a story to tell at their brunch tables." "Don't embarrass me," Marcus shot back. His voice had an edge, the kind he only used with her. "This is important." I tried to calm them both, my hands gripping the steering wheel of our old Toyota. "We're just guests, baby. Let's be polite, eat the food, and leave." When we pulled up to the Carter estate, my breath caught. I'd seen houses like that in magazines, never in real life. A grand stone mansion rose out of the manicured lawn, every window glowing like fireflies in the dusk. Valets in black suits opened car doors. Women in sequined gowns floated across the driveway like swans. I glanced at my daughter in her thrift store dress and at myself in the only nice outfit I owned, navy slacks and a cream blouse. For a moment, shame threatened to swallow me. But Marcus stood tall, buttoned his jacket, and looked at me like this was where he belonged. "Come on, Mom," he said softly. "Let's go." Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and expensive wine. Chandeliers hung like frozen rain above our heads. Waiters glided past with trays of shrimp cocktails and champagne flutes. I wanted to shrink, to fold myself into the wallpaper, but people greeted Marcus like he was already one of them. And then, through the sea of laughter and clinking glasses, I saw him. Richard Carter. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of man who carries his wealth like an invisible crown. His suit was perfectly tailored, but it was his eyes that stopped me. They weren't the cold, sharp eyes I expected from a man with so much power. They were warm, curious, the kind that searched you instead of skimming past. "Mrs. Williams," he said, extending his hand. "I've been looking forward to this." I froze, unsure if I should call him Mr. Carter or Sir. My hands were rough from years of work, but he held them like they were something delicate. "Please," I managed. "It's Angela." He smiled. "Then you must call me Richard." Dinner was a blur of crystal glasses and courses I couldn't pronounce. Richard sat at the head of the table, but his attention kept drifting back to me. He asked about my job at the clinic, about my late husband, about the garden I kept behind our house. Not the polite questions people ask to fill silence, but the kind that lean in, that want to know. I felt Jasmine's eyes rolling from across the table, her fork tapping impatient rhythms. Marcus, though, glowed with pride, as if Richard's interest in me reflected well on him too. At one point, Richard lifted his glass. "Marcus tells me his success is thanks to his mother. That behind every strong man is a stronger woman. I believe it." The guests clapped lightly, but I felt heat rise to my cheeks. I wasn't used to being seen, not in rooms like this. For years, I'd been invisible, background noise to my children's ambitions, a shadow in grocery aisles, a pair of tired hands balancing checkbooks. And yet here, in the house of a man whose wealth could buy half the city, someone was saying my name like it mattered. After dessert, Richard invited me to walk the gardens. Jasmine groaned, Marcus encouraged me, and I, against every cautious bone in my body, agreed. Outside, lanterns glowed along winding stone paths. The night air was cool, fragrant with jasmine vines and roses that seemed too perfect to be real. Richard walked slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he said finally. I glanced at him. "Who?" "My wife," he said after a pause. "She passed 8 years ago. She had that same quiet strength you carry, that same way of listening like you hear more than what people say." I didn't know how to answer, so I let the silence settle. He didn't seem to mind. We stopped by a marble bench and he turned to me. "Angela, I hope tonight isn't the last time we meet. You've given Marcus more than he realizes. I'd like to be a friend to your family if you'll allow it." The words sat heavy in the air. A friend. From a man like him, it could mean anything: charity, curiosity, or something else entirely. I thought of David, of the empty chair, of the life I had built from scraps. Part of me bristled at the idea of needing anyone. Another part, the tired, lonely part, longed for the kindness in his eyes. "Thank you, Richard," I said carefully. "That means a lot." When we left that night, Marcus was beaming, Jasmine was fuming, and I was silent. In the car, the headlights stretched across the dark streets, carrying us back to our little house. But I couldn't stop thinking of Richard Carter, his steady voice, his searching eyes, and the way he said my name as if it belonged in places I had never dared to imagine. The glow of Richard's estate followed us home like a perfume that refused to fade. Even after we pulled into our cracked driveway and the front door shut behind us, I could still feel the weight of chandeliers in my eyes, still hear the careful laughter of people whose bank accounts insulated them from the kind of worries that lived in my kitchen. Marcus was the first to speak, his voice alive with an energy I hadn't heard since his college graduation. "Mom, did you see the way he introduced you? Like you belonged there. People were listening to you." I smiled faintly, setting down my purse. "I don't think those people came to hear about payroll and grocery aisles, Marcus. You're wrong." His words were sharp with conviction. "They respected you. They respected us. This is just the beginning. Mr. Carter believes in me, and now he believes in you too." In the corner, Jasmine kicked off her boots and tossed her jacket over a chair. "Oh, please," she muttered. "He believes in what Marcus can do for his company, and you, Mama, he just wants to parade you around like some charity case." The air stiffened. "Jas, don't do that," Marcus snapped. "Not tonight." "Not tonight. When then? When you're so far up his ladder you can't even see where you came from?" She turned to me, her voice rising. "Mama, you can't really be falling for all that. These people don't care about us. They'll use Marcus up and spit him out, and they'll look at you like a pretty story they can clap for before dessert." I wanted to stop her, to hush her the way I did when she was a little girl stomping through tantrums, but the hurt in her eyes froze me. "Jasmine," I said softly. "He was kind, that's all. He listened." She crossed her arms, her curls shaking as she shook her head. "Kind isn't free, Mama, not in houses like that." She stormed upstairs, her bedroom door slamming shut. The sound echoed through the house, rattling my bones the way thunder does in an old church. Marcus rubbed his temples. "She doesn't get it." "She's young," I said. "She wants to protect us in her own way." "Protect us from what? From opportunity? From someone who actually sees potential?" He looked at me, eyes burning. "Mom, this is the chance we've been waiting for. For years, you've worked yourself to the bone so Jas, and I could dream bigger than this little house. Don't let her ruin it." He kissed my cheek and went upstairs, leaving me alone with the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the weight of two children pulling me in opposite directions. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty chair again. David would have known what to say. He had a way of smoothing conflict with one sentence, of making us laugh when tempers flared. Without him, I was just a referee with no whistle, trying to keep the game from spinning out of control. Later that night, I knocked gently on Jasmine's door. Music leaked through the cracks, soft, mournful, the sound of her guitar strings crying out the words she couldn't say. "Baby girl," I whispered, opening the door. She sat cross-legged on the bed, her notebook open, pages filled with lyrics and doodles. Her eyes were red, but she pretended not to notice. "Don't let Marcus get to you," I said, sitting beside her. "He just wants something better for us." Her lip trembled. "I know, Mama, but every time he talks about better, it sounds like he means farther. Farther from me, farther from you, like the only way to prove he's worth something is to forget where he came from." I stroked her hair the way I did when she was small and afraid of storms. "Your brother loves you. You both just carry it differently. He carries it with plans, you carry it with songs." She leaned into me, silent. "Do you love him, Mama?" she asked suddenly. The question pierced me. "Who? Mr. Carter, do you love him?" The truth was too tangled to answer. Love was a word tied to memories of David, to years of laughter and heartbreak and growth. What I felt when Richard looked at me wasn't love. Not yet. It was possibility. And possibility is a dangerous thing. I pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I don't know what I feel, I just know we can't keep tearing each other apart over it." She nodded, though I wasn't sure she believed me. That night, I lay awake long after the house fell quiet. Marcus's ambition and Jasmine's suspicion weighed on me like twin anchors. And beneath it all, Richard's eyes haunted me, the way he studied me as if he saw more than just a widow with tired hands. Somewhere between those shadows and the sound of rain tapping against the window, I realized something. My children were no longer children. They were adults with their own truths, their own wounds. And maybe, just maybe, this family I had fought so hard to hold together was already changing in ways I could not control. The empty chair by the dining table seemed to whisper back, "Change is the only thing that always stays." It was nearly midnight when the knock came. Our neighborhood wasn't the kind of place where visitors arrived at that hour. The streets went quiet after 10, porches dark except for the occasional glow of a television behind curtains. For a moment, I thought it might be Marcus, forgetting his key, or Jasmine sneaking back after a late-night rehearsal. But both my children were upstairs, their breaths rising and falling through the old floorboards. The knock came again, firm, deliberate, like someone who knew me well enough not to leave. When I opened the door, I saw a face I hadn't looked at in 15 years. "Angela," she said, her voice low, as if she knew speaking too loudly might break the fragile moment. "Carla," I whispered, "my sister." The last time we spoke was at David's funeral. She had stood in the back, her arms crossed, eyes burning with something I refused to name. We argued afterward, about money, about family, about choices I had made and choices she said I'd never admit to, and then she was gone. 15 years of silence stretched between us like a canyon too wide to cross. And yet, there she was. Her hair, once jet black like mine, was now streaked with silver. Her face carried lines of hard living, the kind that come from battles nobody else sees. She wore a plain jacket and held a weathered leather bag close to her chest. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed to say no, to keep the past locked where it couldn't hurt me. But another part, the part that remembered the little girl who used to share my bed when the thunder frightened her, couldn't shut the door. I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table, the one with the empty chair still waiting at the end. Carla's eyes flicked toward it, but she said nothing. She folded her hands, took a breath, and then spoke. "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important. It's about David." The name alone made my stomach twist. For years I had kept his memory sacred, untainted, like a photograph pressed between Bible pages. Hearing her say it now, in that tone, felt like someone was tearing the photograph in two. "What about David?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Carla leaned forward. "He didn't die the way you think he did." My heart stopped. "It was a heart attack. The doctors—" She shook her head. "That's what they told you, but it wasn't the whole truth." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. "Carla, don't play games with me." "I'm not." She opened her bag and pulled out a folder, thick with papers, newspaper clippings, receipts. She spread them across the table like cards in a losing hand. "David was in trouble, Angela, deep trouble. Before he died, he borrowed money from people he shouldn't have. Dangerous people." I stared at the papers but couldn't make sense of the words. Debt, transactions, names I didn't recognize. Carla's eyes softened. "He came to me once before it got bad, asked for help. I told him to walk away, but he couldn't. He said he was doing it for the family, that he wanted Marcus and Jasmine to have a future. But Angela, he got in over his head." My chest ached. I wanted to scream, to deny it. David was a teacher, a good man. He read history books at the table and quoted Dr. King to the children. He kissed my forehead before bed. He wasn't a man who tangled with debts and threats. But then I thought of the nights he stayed out late, the envelopes he never explained, the way his smile sometimes faltered when he thought no one was watching. "Why are you telling me this now?" I whispered. Carla hesitated. "Because his name has come up again, and not just his, yours." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What are you talking about?" "There are people asking questions. About Marcus, about Jasmine, about you, and about someone you've been seen with." "Richard," I breathed before I could stop myself. Her silence was the answer. "You don't know him," I said quickly. "He's not part of this." but doubt had already planted itself in my chest, a poisonous root twisting around the memory of his warm eyes, his gentle voice. Carla reached across the table, her hand rough against mine. "Angela, listen to me. You need to be careful. Whatever you think you know about Richard Carter, you don't. And whatever you thought you knew about David, there's more to the story." The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Upstairs, Marcus shifted in his sleep. Jasmine's music had stopped. The house seemed to hold its breath. Finally, I pulled my hand away. "Carla, I've spent 15 years holding this family together with nothing but faith and exhaustion. I can't dig into ghosts right now. I can't." Her eyes glistened. "You don't have a choice, sister. The past doesn't stay buried. It always finds its way back." When she left that night, the papers remained on the table. I didn't touch them. I couldn't. I sat in the kitchen until the first gray light of dawn crept through the window, staring at the empty chair, wondering if I had been living with a stranger's shadow all along. And for the first time in years, I wasn't sure if David's memory was something to protect or something to fear. The folder Carla left sat on my kitchen table for 3 days, untouched. I moved around it the way you move around a wound you don't want to see. Every time I poured coffee, every time I set down my grocery bags, it was there. Thick, accusing, waiting. I told myself I didn't need to open it, that the past belonged to the past. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid that whatever I found inside would not only unravel David's memory, but unravel me too. And in the middle of that storm, Richard called. He had a way of choosing moments. His voice came through the phone smooth as velvet, warm in a way that made the kitchen walls feel less lonely. "Angela," he said, like my name was the first word he learned that day, "I'd like to see you again. Dinner, just the two of us." I hesitated. I thought of Carla's warning, of debts and shadows and men who weren't what they seemed. But then I thought of the way he looked at me in his garden, as if I were more than a tired widow with grocery store hands. And I thought of the empty chair, how quiet it had been for years. "Yes," I heard myself say. "Dinner sounds nice." When I hung up, guilt pricked at me, sharp and mean. It wasn't just about David anymore. It was about my children. About what it would mean for them to see their mother walking into another man's world. That evening, Marcus came home late, his tie askew, his eyes alive with purpose. "Mom," he said, "Richard offered me a spot on his next project. Big money, real responsibility. This is it. This is the opportunity we've been praying for." I smiled because that's what mothers do, but my chest tightened. Opportunity always came with a price, and I wasn't sure my son saw the bill. Before I could answer, Jasmine came down the stairs, guitar slung over her shoulder, her voice sharp as broken glass. Of course he did, because men like Richard Carter always need someone like Marcus to do their work while they sit in mansions sipping champagne. "Jasmine," I warned, but she wasn't finished. "And now you too, Mama. Don't think I didn't hear. You're going to dinner with him." The words hit like a slap. "How do you know that?" I asked quietly. She crossed her arms, defiant. "You talk on the phone in this house, I hear it. And you smile when you do, the same smile you used to give Daddy." Marcus stood, his face tightening. "Why are you always like this, Jas? Bitter, suspicious. Not everything is a conspiracy." "Maybe not," she shot back, "but some things are exactly what they look like. A rich man dangling promises so you'll follow him around like lost dogs." Their voices rose, clashing against each other until the walls seemed to tremble. I stepped between them, raising my hands. "Enough!" The silence afterward was heavy, filled with things we didn't dare say. Jasmine's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Mama, don't do this. Don't let him in. We've already lost one man who promised us the world. We can't lose you too." And with that, she stormed out the door, the slam rattling the windows. Marcus exhaled hard, dragging a hand through his hair. "She doesn't understand. She lives in songs and dreams, but you get it, Mom. You see what this could mean for us. Don't let her ruin it." He kissed my cheek and went upstairs, leaving me in the middle of the kitchen again, with the folder on the table and the echo of slammed doors in my ears. Later that week, I met Richard at a quiet restaurant tucked away downtown. Candles glowed low on each table, and soft jazz drifted through the air. He stood as I entered, pulling out my chair like a man from another era. "You look beautiful," he said simply. I almost laughed. My dress was old, my shoes scuffed, my hands rough. But when he said it, I almost believed him. Dinner passed in warm conversation. He told me about his late wife, about how he still kept her piano untouched in their home. I told him about Marcus's childhood spelling bees, about Jasmine singing in the church choir. He listened, really listened, in a way that made me forget the world outside the restaurant walls. But when the waiter cleared our plates, Richard leaned closer. His eyes softened, his voice low. "Angela, I don't want to just be your friend. I'd like to be more, if you'll let me." My heart pounded. The world seemed to pause. I thought of David's chair, of Carla's warning, of my children's divided faces, one urging me forward, the other pulling me back. And I thought of myself, the woman who had carried grief for so long that she almost forgot what it felt like to be seen. I opened my mouth to answer, but the truth was tangled, caught somewhere between longing and fear. At that moment, I realized temptation doesn't always arrive in the form of sin. Sometimes it arrives in the form of kindness when your heart is starved for it. And I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to resist. The night after dinner with Richard, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the shadows from the street lamp crawling across the plaster like restless ghosts. His words, "I'd like to be more," still echoed in my ears, soft as velvet, heavy as stone. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that love, or something like it, could find me again at 50 years old, with tired hands and a heart still limping from loss. But faith and fear rarely walk hand in hand. And my fear was loud. The folder Carla left hadn't moved from the table. By now, it was like a third presence in the house, sitting across from me each morning as I drank my coffee. I hadn't opened it, but I felt it humming, whispering, daring me to break the seal. One evening, as I cleared the plates after dinner, Jasmine picked it up. "What's this?" she asked, flipping the cover. "Put it down," I said quickly, too quickly. Her eyes narrowed. "Is this about Daddy?" I reached for it, but she pulled back. Her voice softened, the anger stripped away. "Mama, if there's something you're not telling us, we deserve to know." I stared at her, my baby, no longer a baby, holding secrets she hadn't earned. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to spill everything Carla had told me to unburden myself. But one look at Marcus, his sleeves rolled up, his tie still dangling loose after another 14-hour day, stopped me cold. He didn't need more weight. He was already drowning in expectations, so I lied. "It's just bills," I said. "Old records, nothing you need to worry about." Jasmine didn't look convinced, but she let it go. For now. That week, Richard invited me to his office. His world wasn't chandeliers and gardens this time. It was glass and steel, a skyscraper that rose above Atlanta like a crown. I rode the elevator with men in suits and women clicking high heels across marble floors. When I stepped out, Richard's assistant guided me into a corner office that looked like it belonged in a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched behind him, the city glowing at his back. He stood when I entered, smiling warmly. But there was something else in his eyes that morning, something guarded. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I wanted to show you where Marcus is working, give you a sense of the future." He led me around the office, introducing me to colleagues, shaking hands, sprinkling my son's name into every conversation like a blessing. Pride filled me, yes, but it was laced with unease. Richard had a way of making promises with his eyes, promises I wasn't sure anyone could keep. When we returned to his desk, he handed me a glass of water, and as I set it down, my fingers brushed a stack of papers. My eyes caught the heading before I could stop myself. Financial Holdings Carter Developments. Below it, a list of accounts, properties, investments. But one name jumped off the page and lodged itself in my chest. Jenkins & Co., my husband's old employer. I froze. The world around me went silent except for the steady hum of the city below. Richard noticed. He followed my gaze, then slid the papers into a drawer with one smooth motion. "Business," he said lightly, as if the word alone could erase what I'd seen. "You don't need to trouble yourself with that." But trouble was already there. That night, back in our little kitchen, I couldn't eat. The name Jenkins echoed in my mind. Carla's voice came back. He borrowed money from the wrong people. Could it be connected? Could Richard, this man who poured me wine and walked me through rose gardens, have known my husband in ways I never imagined? I thought of the empty chair. What if the man who had once filled it had secrets buried beneath Richard's empire of glass? I wanted to tell Marcus. I wanted to tell Jasmine. But Marcus was buzzing with excitement. Richard had praised his work in front of the entire team. And Jasmine, well, she didn't need another reason to despise him, so I swallowed it. Alone. But that night, as rain tapped against the windows and thunder rolled far off, I finally opened Carla's folder. Inside were clippings, debt records, scrawled notes. And there, in black ink on a crumpled page, was the same name I had seen in Richard's office. Jenkins. The cracks in the glass were no longer hairline fractures. They were spreading, fast and jagged, threatening to shatter the picture I had painted of Richard and of David. And I knew, deep in my bones, that the truth was coming, whether I was ready or not. The Sunday after I opened Carla's folder, the world shifted again. Richard invited us, not just me, but Marcus and Jasmine too, to another gathering at his estate. He called it a celebration dinner, though Marcus suspected it was more than that. My son wore his best suit, polished his shoes twice, and carried himself as though he were about to walk into destiny. Jasmine, on the other hand, came only because I begged her. Her arms folded and her jaw set like stone before we even left the driveway. As we pulled through the gates of Richard's home, I caught myself staring at the mansion with new eyes. Where once I had seen only luxury, now I looked for shadows. Every marble column, every manicured hedge seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't meant to know. Jenkins, David, debt. The cracks in the glass of Richard's empire haunted me, even as my children flanked me like mismatched angels, one full of faith, the other of doubt. Inside, the house glowed brighter than before. Music drifted from a string quartet, waiters floated with silver trays, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Richard moved through the crowd like a man at ease in his kingdom, but his gaze kept finding me, steady and sure, as though I were the only guest in the room. Dinner was lavish. Filet mignon, asparagus, wine that tasted like velvet. I ate without tasting, smiling when spoken to, nodding at strangers whose names I forgot before the syllables left their lips. Marcus sat tall, glowing under Richard's praise. Jasmine picked at her plate, her eyes flicking to me now and then, a silent warning written in her stare. And then, just as dessert was cleared, Richard rose to his feet. The room hushed, glasses stilled. All eyes turned to him. He lifted his glass, his voice carrying with the practiced ease of a man used to commanding attention. "Friends," he began, "tonight is not about business. Tonight is about gratitude and about love." My heart thudded. He looked down at me, his eyes softening, and in that moment the crowd disappeared. "Angela," he said, "in you I've found a strength I thought I had lost forever. You remind me that life, even after grief, can begin again. You've raised 2 remarkable children, and you've done it with grace that humbles me." I felt the room leaning forward, breaths held, waiting. Richard set down his glass and reached into his pocket. My stomach dropped. When he lowered himself to one knee, the room erupted into gasps. A velvet box opened, and inside, a diamond burned under the chandelier like a captured star. Angela Williams, he said, his voice steady, will you marry me? The world blurred, my hands trembled. Across the table, Marcus's face shone with awe, his eyes pleading with me to say yes. Jasmine's fork clattered against her plate, her mouth falling open in disbelief. The diamond glimmered, but in my mind I saw the folder waiting at home, its papers heavy with truths I hadn't yet faced. I saw David's empty chair, the ghost of promises once broken. I heard Carla's voice warning me, you don't know him. The silence stretched, unbearable. People leaned in, eager to witness the fairy tale. But my chest tightened, breath catching on a truth I couldn't speak aloud. Not here, not now. My lips parted. And before I could form the word, Jasmine pushed back her chair so violently it toppled. No, she said, her voice sharp, slicing the silence. She can't, she won't. The crowd gasped again. Marcus shot to his feet. Jasmine, stop. But she was already shaking, her hands balled into fists, tears burning her eyes. You don't know him, Mama. You don't know what he is, and you're not going to throw yourself into his world just because he knows how to smile. The room was chaos, murmurs, stares, the quartet faltering mid-song. Richard remained kneeling, the ring glinting, his jaw tight though his voice stayed calm. Angela, he said, looking only at me, ignore the noise, this is between us. But it wasn't, not anymore. It was between me, my children, the shadows of the past, and the man kneeling at my feet with a star in a box. I looked at Marcus, his eyes begging. I looked at Jasmine, her face fierce with fear. And for the first time in years, I realized that whatever choice I made, our family would never be the same. I don't remember how the evening ended. I only remember the blur of faces, wealthy strangers whispering into crystal glasses, Marcus tugging at my arm as though pulling me toward a future he could already see, and Jasmine's voice cutting through the noise like a blade, shaking with fury and fear. Richard never flinched. He stayed on one knee until I helped him rise, my hand trembling in his. His eyes searched mine for an answer, but I gave none. Only a faint smile, a whisper meant to save the room, not myself. We'll talk later. Later. That word became a weight that dragged me through the following days. At home, the storm never ceased. Marcus was relentless. Mom, do you realize what this means? Richard isn't just offering you marriage, he's offering security, dignity, a life where you don't have to work yourself to death. He respects you. He respects us. Why can't Jasmine see that? Jasmine heard him from the stairwell and stormed into the kitchen. Because it's a lie, Marcus. All of it. People like him don't love women like Mama. They use them. And you're just his pawn. Don't you get it? Pawn? Marcus snapped. Do you think my work doesn't matter? Do you think he hasn't recognized my talent? You're jealous because you've got nothing but your little songs and daydreams. Better a dream than selling my soul. Their voices collided, echoing through the house, each word sharpening like glass shards. I tried to quiet them, but they wouldn't stop. Finally, I slammed my hand against the table. Enough, both of you. The silence after was worse than the shouting. Marcus's chest heaved, Jasmine's eyes burned, and between them I stood, exhausted, torn, the rope they kept pulling until it frayed. Later that night, Jasmine crept into my room. She sat on the edge of my bed, her anger cooled into something softer, more fragile. Mama, she whispered, please don't marry him, please, I don't trust him, and I don't want to lose you the way we lost Daddy. Her words sank deep. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back, her lip trembling. If you marry him, I don't know if I can stay here. I don't know if I can watch you disappear into his world. When she left, I lay awake listening to her sobs through the thin walls. The next morning, Marcus found me in the kitchen. He was calmer now, almost pleading. Mom, don't let her poison you against him. You deserve happiness. Don't let Dad's ghost hold you hostage. You're allowed to move on. You're allowed to live. His words stung because they were true. For years, I had lived in the shadow of that empty chair, letting it dictate the rhythm of my days. Maybe I was holding on too tightly. Maybe Richard was the lifeline I had been too afraid to grab, but fear still coiled in my chest. And when the knock came again, steady, deliberate, I knew who it was before I opened the door. Carla. She stood there with rain on her jacket, her eyes sharp, her expression grim. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the living room. Marcus scowled. Jasmine crossed her arms. I braced myself. Carla laid another folder on the table, thicker than the first. "I warned you," she said, "but now I have proof." Richard Carter wasn't just connected to David's company, he was connected to David himself. He knew your husband, Angela. He knew him well. The room tilted. My heart pounded. "What are you saying?" I whispered. "I'm saying Richard isn't who he wants you to believe he is," Carla said, her voice steady as stone. "And if you marry him, you're not just marrying a man, you're marrying into the very past that destroyed your husband." Jasmine gasped. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "That's ridiculous. He's not some criminal, Aunt Carla. He's a respected man." Carla slid a paper across the table. I stared at it, an old financial record, David's name scrawled beside Richard's, linked by a transaction dated only months before David's death. The crack in the glass widened, splitting me open. Richard's ring still glimmered in its box on my nightstand. And for the first time, I wondered if the diamond wasn't a promise, but a chain. I didn't want to go. Every bone in my body told me to stay home, to keep the curtains drawn and the lights off. But Marcus begged, Jasmine refused, and Richard insisted. So I found myself standing in front of the mirror, smoothing down a dress I hadn't worn in years, feeling like I was walking into a play where the script had already been written for me. Richard called it an engagement celebration, though I hadn't said yes. Not yet. The diamond ring still lay unopened on my nightstand. And yet the invitations had gone out, the caterers booked, the ballroom prepared. Richard moved as if my consent was inevitable, as if the future were something he could sign into being with a pen and a smile. The hotel ballroom shimmered that evening, lit by chandeliers that glowed like suns. Tables spread with white linen, waiters carrying trays of champagne, music floating from a grand piano. The crowd was thick with business partners, politicians, and men who wore their wealth like armor. I walked in at Richard's side, his hand warm against mine, his voice calm in my ear. "Trust me, Angela, tonight will be perfect." Marcus hovered close, glowing with pride. Jasmine trailed behind, her eyes sharp, her lips pressed tight. Carla slipped in quietly, uninvited but unshakable, her gaze cutting across the room like a knife. The speeches began, long, indulgent, full of praise for Richard's empire and for Marcus's bright future. I smiled where I had to, nodded at strangers who looked at me as if trying to solve a puzzle. Who was this woman, this widow from Atlanta, who had captured Richard Carter's attention? Then Richard stood. He tapped the microphone and the room hushed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady, rich, commanding, "tonight is not about me. It is about second chances. It is about love found in unexpected places. Angela Williams, will you?" "Stop." The word sliced the air. It came from Jasmine. She was on her feet, her hands trembling, her voice shaking but strong. "Don't do this, Mama. Not here, not like this." The crowd gasped. Richard's eyes narrowed, but before he could speak, Carla rose from the back of the room. "She's right," Carla said, her voice ringing clear. "Because before Angela gives her answer, you all deserve to know who Richard Carter really is." Murmurs rippled through the room. Richard's face tightened. "Carla, this is not the time." "It's exactly the time." She pulled a folder from her bag, holding it high like scripture. "This man isn't just a grieving widower who found love again. He was tied to my sister's husband, to David Williams, and not in friendship." Gasps again, heads turned. The piano fell silent. Carla spread the papers across a table, her hands steady even as the crowd pressed forward. Financial records. Payments, debt markers, transactions linking Richard Carter and David Williams in the months before David died. My brother-in-law didn't simply collapse, he was trapped, and Richard Carter was standing right there holding the rope. The room exploded. Voices shouted, cameras flashed, whispers darted like sparks across dry grass. I stood frozen, the blood draining from my face, my heart hammering. "Angela," Richard said quickly, stepping toward me, his hand outstretched. "This is nonsense. Old debts, old rumors, your sister has never forgiven me for." "For what?" Carla snapped. "For hiding the truth, for building an empire on the backs of men like David? Tell them, Richard, tell her the truth." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it, the flicker of guilt, the shadow behind his eyes. It was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by practiced charm. "Angela, don't let this spectacle fool you. I love you, that's all that matters." But in that moment, with the ballroom spinning, with Marcus pale and speechless and Jasmine gripping my hand, I realized love was not enough. Not if it was built on lies. Not if the cracks in the glass led straight back to the chair that had been empty for 5 long years. I pulled my hand from his. And for the first time, I saw Richard Carter not as a savior, not as a chance at redemption, but as another man whose secrets threatened to destroy the family I had spent my life holding together. The revelation wasn't finished. I knew that. But the silence in the room told me one thing. The story I had believed about David, about Richard, about my own life, it was already breaking apart. And soon, nothing would be the same. The ballroom emptied in pieces. Guests left in murmuring clusters, clutching their champagne glasses like shields, whispering as though they had just watched a car crash they couldn't look away from. Reporters lingered near the doorway, snapping photographs of Richard's face, my face, Marcus's wide-eyed shock, Jasmine's trembling defiance. Through it all, Richard stood tall, his jaw locked, his smile brittle. He whispered into my ear, urgent and low, "Don't do this here. Let's talk in private." I followed, though my knees shook beneath me. We slipped into a side room, a study smaller and darker, lined with shelves of leather-bound books that smelled of old money and dust. The door clicked shut behind us. For a moment, the silence was thick enough to choke on. "Tell me it isn't true," I whispered, my voice hoarse. Richard's hands spread, palms up, as though he could gather the truth into something gentle. "Angela, listen to me. David, he was in over his head. He came to me for help. I lent him money, yes, that's all. Whatever your sister told you, whatever she thinks she knows, it's twisted." My throat tightened. "Why didn't you ever tell me? You've sat across from me, smiled at me, praised the memory of my husband, all while knowing this, while hiding this." "I didn't want to hurt you," he said quickly, stepping closer. "You've suffered enough, and if you knew how deep David's mistakes were—" "Stop!" My voice cracked, sharp as glass. "Don't you dare shift this to him. He's not here to defend himself, and if you're so innocent, why do I see fear in your eyes right now?" For the first time since I had met him, Richard faltered. His shoulders sagged, his face crumpled for half a second before he caught himself again. "I loved him like a brother," he said softly. "And I love you. That hasn't changed. Please, Angela, don't let Carla poison you against me. Don't let Jasmine's suspicion tear this apart. We can move past this. You and me, together." His words wrapped around me like silk and chains all at once. And in that moment, I understood temptation for what it truly was, not just the lure of desire, but the hunger to believe in something easier than the truth. I stepped back. "You built your empire on the same shadows that swallowed my husband, and you thought I would let you sweep me into them, smiling like a fool. But I'm not that woman, Richard. Not anymore." The door opened suddenly. Marcus stood there, pale, his tie askew, his eyes darting between us. "Mom, what's going on?" Richard straightened immediately, his polished mask sliding back into place. "Nothing your mother needs to trouble herself with. Marcus, son, you know the business world is complicated. Your father—" "Don't." My voice cut through his. I turned to Marcus. "Your father borrowed money from Richard before he died. Money that tied him to things we never knew. and Richard didn't tell us. He let me believe in fairy tales while holding the truth in his pocket. Marcus's face twisted, disbelief colliding with hurt. That can't be right. Mr. Carter, he believes in me. He's given me everything. He gave you opportunity, Jasmine said from behind him, her arms crossed, her voice sharp as a whip. But opportunity that comes from lies isn't worth keeping. Shut up, Jasmine, Marcus shouted, spinning toward her. You've wanted this from the start. You've wanted him to be the villain so you could be right. You don't care about what this means for Mom or for me, you just want to tear it all down. Tears burned Jasmine's eyes, but she stood her ground. I care about Mama, I care about the truth, and I won't watch her walk into the same trap Daddy did. Their words collided like thunder. My children, my heart, my reason for surviving stood at war in front of me. I raised my hands, my voice trembling but firm. Enough! Stop tearing each other apart. This is not about you choosing sides. This is about me deciding what kind of life we will live from here on. The room stilled. Marcus looked at me desperate. Mom, please, don't throw this away. Don't throw him away. We could finally have more than survival. Jasmine shook her head, her voice breaking. Mama, if you stay with him, you'll lose us. You'll lose me. And there it was, the breaking point. Richard's empire, David's ghost, Marcus's ambition, Jasmine's fear, it all converged on me. My choice, my burden, my family's fate balanced on the edge of words I hadn't yet spoken. I looked at Richard, at the man who had offered me love draped in silk and shadows. I looked at my children, one ready to climb his ladder, the other ready to burn it down. And I realized the truth. No matter what choice I made, the life we had before, the fragile, fractured family that survived David's death, was gone. What came next would be something new. Something born not of promises or lies, but of the wreckage left behind. The night of Richard's proposal broke something inside me, but it also built something new. For days after, I moved through the house like a ghost, watching my children drift to opposite corners. Marcus simmering in silence, Jasmine scribbling lyrics into her notebook like she was trying to write her way out of grief. The air between us was heavy, fragile, stretched thin by truths none of us wanted but all of us had to carry. I avoided Richard's calls. His voice filled my voicemail, pleas, apologies, reassurances that the past didn't matter. But it did, it always did. One evening, I gathered Marcus and Jasmine at the table. The same table where David once sat, the same table where the empty chair had watched us through laughter and tears. I need you both to listen, I said. Marcus's jaw clenched. Jasmine's eyes softened with worry. I can't marry Richard, not because I don't want to believe in new love, but because love built on secrets is not love, it's another prison. I've lived in the shadow of one empty chair for too long. I won't let another man build a house of glass around us and call it a home. Marcus's eyes fell to the table. His lips parted, then closed again as if words had abandoned him. Finally, he whispered, Mom, I just wanted you to be happy. Tears pricked my eyes. I reached for his hand. I know, baby, and one day I will be. But happiness can't come at the cost of truth. We have to build our lives on something solid, even if it's small, even if it's just us. Jasmine slipped her hand over mine, her eyes wet. Then it's enough, us is enough. In that moment, something shifted. For the first time since David's death, I felt like the three of us weren't broken pieces rattling around in the dark. We were something whole, something remade, not perfect, but honest. In the weeks that followed, I sold the house. The empty chair, the walls heavy with memories, the rooms echoing with David's ghost, it was time to let go. We moved into a smaller home, nothing grand but warm. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen window in the mornings, and laughter, real laughter, began to return. Marcus stayed at his job, but with new eyes. He no longer spoke of Richard like a savior, but like a lesson. He worked hard, yes, but he remembered to come home, to sit at the table, to breathe. Jasmine sang again, her songs stronger, sharper, carrying the weight of everything we had endured. She booked small shows at coffee houses and community centers, her voice wrapping strangers in stories of resilience. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes and listened, I swore I could hear David in her notes, proud, steady, present, and me, I rested. For the first time in years, I let myself rest. No longer chasing ghosts, no longer clutching at promises wrapped in diamonds. I took joy in simple things: the smell of cornbread baking, the sound of my children talking in the living room, the way the evening sun touched the walls of a house that belonged only to us. Richard faded into the distance. His calls stopped. His empire still glittered, but from far away it looked less like a palace and more like a cage. I did not hate him. I did not love him. He was simply part of the story that had brought me back to myself. Life is not a straight line. It bends, it breaks, it rebuilds. And sometimes, the family you thought was gone forever is born again, not in the same shape, but in a truer one. I sit here now, years older, still carrying the memory of that empty chair. But when I look around my table today, I see Marcus, grown but grounded. I see Jasmine, singing and laughing, her curls catching the light. I see no empty chair because I no longer set a place for the past. I set a place for the future. And that is enough. Dear friends, thank you for walking through this story with me, for listening to the journey of a mother, a widow, a woman finding her way back to strength. My prayer for you is simple: that your homes are filled with peace, that your hearts find courage, and that your families, however broken, however remade, hold on to love. Stay safe, stay strong, and may your days be blessed with health and happiness. With gratitude, Angela Williams.